There are three key analytics that every mobile app should be tracking. And understanding how these analytics work, how they relate to one another, and how they relate to the success of your app are vitally important. These are activation, which is going through your onboarding flow and then doing a meaningful engagement activity. It is onboarding breadth, which is users actually coming back to your app. And then it's onboarding depth. And this is users coming back to your app and then using some sort of feature of value, typically deep. And understanding how these three things relate to one another are very important. Okay, so we're going to go over to Mixpanel. We're going to take a look at a few analytics related to onboarding, engagement breadth, and engagement depth. The first one we'll talk about is activation. And in some of our other videos, we talk a little bit more about this, but really this is a user onboarding, going through your sign-up flow, and then doing one meaningful engagement activity. This is the concept of activation. If we click in here a little bit deeper, we can kind of scroll through and look. Mixpanel is great because you can see where things drop off. You can actually click in to see what users actually dropped off. So you see here, we got group suggestion and then onboarding complete. If you click in here, you can see the percent that actually dropped off. You can click view users and you can see which users dropped off. You could go through and either do some sort of engagement campaign, or you could just maybe ask them why they dropped off or whatnot. But this is a really good view for activation. Again, the most critical thing here is that your users are onboarding to your application and doing some meaningful engagement activity. So if they are not doing that meaningful engagement activity, you would not consider them activated. Right? So at this point, you could do some sort of engagement campaign with OneSignal or Braze to basically nudge them along. So if they have only made it to this point, you could send them a push notification reminding them that they need to complete onboarding. If they have gotten to complete onboarding but they have not done a meaningful engagement activity, you could do another push notification campaign to get them to do some sort of engagement activity like create a new post or complete their profile or add a business to a list, etc. So that's the activation part of Mixpanel in analytics. If we go back to the board, we can see another one for, this one is post-onboarding retention, but this is what you would consider engagement breadth. This is users coming back to the app. And commonly you'll see a little number graph like this one, where you'll see cohorts of users and how those cohorts have actually came back to the app after week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, etc. So you can see here, like we had on the April 16th, that cohort, it was just 8 users. But we did have 87% come back that week, which is good. But in week 1, there was a pretty significant drop off. So like the next week, only 37% came back. And week 2 is even worse. None of them came back. Although it's only 8, so it's a pretty small sample size. The next cohort was maybe a little bit better. Not as many came back that first week. But the week after, you do have a nice little lift here. So it's about 64%. And week 2, 58, and it looks like it's trending towards 45. So it's pretty good retention, all things considered. Same thing with this April 20th, this April 27th. In this app in particular, there's a bit of an uplift we did for this cohort here. So that's why we're seeing the better numbers, but this is something you can kind of track on a week-by-week basis. Up here, you can kind of see these details, but it's just kind of like overall what kind of retention you're getting. If you're getting a big drop-off at some point, you could maybe understand why that is by talking to the users or looking further into the analytics, or you can do some sort of engagement campaign to keep them interested in the app. So maybe you do a free trial or something like that, but those are a few different strategies. Going back to our board, we can look at the engagement depth. So this is for your activated users, like how well are they actually engaging in your product? In most apps, we will measure many different things because we want to understand what users are doing and what users value. Early on in the app, we usually typically use a percentage rather than just raw number. And this is just better because the raw numbers can be a little low initially. So percent is pretty good. So here we have a bunch of different key features in our app that we think users value, and we just kind of track those over time. And you can see here like percent of users that opened up a list and like how that's really tracked. So this in particular has kind of dropped over time. The same thing with the percent who opened a group. We've seen a slow, steady drop. And really, there's a few things here. One, you want to understand what users are valuing and what they're really doing. But two, you do want them to engage deep in your app, because this basically tells you that they value different parts of your product. So if these are really going low, you either need to make them aware of this, or you need to nudge them to continue doing it, or maybe you decommission certain things in favor of others, give the app a little bit more focus. But it's good to just track these week over week to see how users are actually using your product and how they're engaging. And if these are healthy, if these are really strong, if you've got certain features that a lot of your user base is using, this is a good sign to try to start converting them. Maybe you take some of these highly engaged products and you either put them behind a paywall, or you take features of them and offer them for a premium. And this would be a good opportunity to start monetizing your product. All right, these are just a few important core engagement metrics that we personally value at Raptor. This is activation, this is engagement breadth, and this is engagement depth. And these are your really foundation in your app in terms of getting you to the monetization level. Once you nail these, you can then start adding on activation, which is upstream, and monetization or conversion, which is the step right after engagement depth. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to help. Thank you. We're going to take a look at an example of each one just to understand how each one works.